Yes, there he is. He's big and famous, social media giant. He's got millions of supporters and followers and fans because he's doing great work, fighting for justice because justice matters. Look who it is. My older, balder brother, Papa Hamster, Glenn Kirschner.
My brother in baldness. How are you, Pete? Happy holidays.
I love the going live. I'm no monster like you are. I hope to be someday get hundreds of thousands of people watching my live things like a lot of people are, because I love I like the funny insults. And some MAGA guy said some real shitty thing to me, but then he said I look like a baby hamster, and I genuinely laughed. I was like, it's not untrue though.
Pete, one of my favorite lines is when you were down at our annual Team Justice gathering in D.C. and you were ripping on everybody, including Mike Fanone, who was there in the audience.
Who attacks Michael Fanone, American hero?
This is probably the whole night. This was my favorite line. You're up on stage and you're like, Mike, big, scary police officer. He's done it all. He's got the tattoos. But, you get up real close to him. He smells like a baby lamb.
It's really the most.
I don't know. That just hit me as so damn funny.
I think I made that up in the moment ish. Yeah, I think I did, because I was just talking to him like right before you brought me up there at that amazing event that you host. And I think I thought of like what animal sounds the softest, most docile, most vulnerable, and I think that's what I came up with. I don't know if I could, even if I had time to think about it, if I could top it. Baby lamb seems the antithesis of what Michael Fanone is as well.
Not the way you would think Mike would smell. Yeah.
No, you'd think he'd smell like blood and gunpowder and nails and tattoo ink and anger, whatever that smells like. Righteous anger, I should say. How was your Christmas, New Year's week here? I call it Taint Week, the week between Christmas and New Year's where nothing happens. Are you getting a lot of wishes from your famous friends? Did Robert De Niro text you and say, Merry Christmas, have a justice year or whatever?
No, I'm less concerned with my famous friends, and when I can get all six of my kids and all four of my grandkids under one roof, and that's heaven to me. That is absolutely.
I know. Don't get me wrong.
No, it makes me think that this is not what I had on my bingo card in my retirement from DOJ. Right? I did not say, you know what, I'm going to go into courtrooms for 30 years and I'm going to bang out murder cases and RICO cases, and then I'm going to become a content creator. I mean, that was not the plan, right? And yet here we are. This is the fight that has chosen us, right? The fight for the rule of law, for democracy, for decency, for diversity, for ethics in government. And this is now what we get to spend our time doing all day, every day. But, when we right this American ship, and I have to believe we will, I'm going to go into a real retirement and just spend time with my kids and my grandkids, because there's nothing better. Everybody who has kids and grandkids knows, the kids can drive you nuts when you're raising them. But man, once the grandkids come along, it's a whole different dynamic.
I don't know. I mean, listen, I want to believe that about you. I do believe everything you said about your family, what makes you truly feel rich. And I know it. I've seen it. We're personal, close friends. I've met your family. Obviously, I know your wife. She just texted me last night, but we shouldn't talk about it. Anyhow, I know that you feel that way. And I know that you weren't planning to land here and be, selling swag when you were in the federal government. But you're doing this because you have a lot of credibility on the issues that you talk about, obviously, which is why I like getting you outside your lane just a little bit. All that being said, the fact that you have become this person who is a credible expert on the legal issues and matters that you worked on for 30 years and explaining them in a way that really works for us, a lot of celebrities have become big supporters. They want your approval. And all I'm asking is, have we heard from anybody during the holidays? You're going to give me some bullshit modesty again? It's not bullshit.
Well, look.
He's not going to tell us.
No, I'm not going to tell you. But what I am going to tell you is I am as surprised as anybody that in this chapter 2, I would start getting these direct messages from people like, may he rest in peace, Rob Reiner, and who was the neurotic comic? Richard Lewis. May he rest in peace, Richard. These people and Robert De Niro. These people reached out to me and they're like, we appreciate your legal analysis, and we got some questions, and I would go on to develop relationships and friendships with these people, which again is just like this gift to this Jersey gutter kid. Like, I'm never going to meet Bob De Niro. Really? I mean, Raging Bull, are you kidding me? I was a boxer. My pop was a boxer. So, but that has been a real pleasant surprise. And, yeah, some of them, who are still with us will reach out from time to time and we chat. And so.
Weren't you on? Didn't you do an event with Reiner and Fugelsang? Was that you?
I was on stage I just actually hosted Fugelsang's DC book launch, which separation of church and hate. I'll tell you, and I'm not a book salesman, and I'm not getting a cut of the proceeds from John's book. But if you want to learn and you want to laugh on every damn page on a topic as deep and dense as the Bible and Jesus's actual teachings, as opposed to the Paul's letters, which are not Jesus's word, and I don't want to launch into all that. That book is amazing.
Oh yeah. I mean, John, I've known John my whole career, and John's good at everything he does. But the thing that he always needed to do was write that book that he wrote. And that's why it's become so popular and a New York Times bestseller. So congratulations to our friend, John Fugelsang. But you were on stage with him and
stage with Rob Reiner. And so I ended up traveling the country with Stephanie Miller's Sexy Liberal Tour. And that, included John and lots of other great comics. So I would be on stage all the time. But the nice thing about it is I was part of the last block or act or segment or whatever you call it in Hollywood terms. You would know that. I don't know that stuff. And I would jump up on stage with another guest. So it was Rob Reiner one time. It was Mark Hamill. It was Ron Perlman. It was Jamie Raskin. It was Adam Schiff. So I would get to be on stage with these people talking about, the current state of the rule of law and how it's being, abused by Trump and his flunkies. But the thing that I loved about Rob Reiner, we got to meet his wife too. My wife and I, got to hang out with them. And the first thing Rob said when he and I walked on stage together to a wonderful audience out in California, he said, "I just want to go on record. I have more hair than Glenn Kirschner." And I'm like, so of course I said, "Yeah, it's go time, Daffodil. Let's go." That's not what I said. Instead, I just probably sat there looking wounded. I didn't have a snappy comeback, but recently, Pete, I wrote a piece, My Revenge on Rob Reiner. This was months before, obviously, he and his wife were taken by violent crime. And it was really more of a tribute and an homage to Rob, because I was an enormous fan of his work over the years. And I remember when I was sitting, I'm going to go stream of consciousness here for a minute. I was sitting in a federal court in Washington, D.C., covering the Oath Keepers trial for MSNBC. And the witness on the witness stand started reading text messages between two of the insurrectionists, two of the Oath Keepers. One was saying, "I'm on my way to attack the Capitol." I'm obviously paraphrasing exactly what he said. And the other one said, "Have fun storming the castle." And that's obviously a line from the iconic Princess Bride.
Oh.
So I run out into the hall and I'm messaging Rob. I'm like, "You're not going to believe this, but a line from your movie, The Princess Bride, just made a showing in the evidence in the Oath Keepers criminal trial, seditious conspiracy trial." And I think he was like equal parts amused and appalled, I think, because the insurrectionists are quoting Princess Bride as they're literally attacking American democracy.
That's a really interesting story and a great story. And I'm so glad that you got to spend time with him and that he got to spend time with you. And that is the portion that concludes the portion of our conversation where I drill you on your celebrity friendships and relationships. Although we could keep going. I'm happy to, you say that you're going to someday retire when all this is done, but you can't even take a day off, as we just established. So you've been working through this holiday pretty much. You spent a couple days, with your family?
Yeah, I probably lied a couple of minutes ago. I'm going to find it really hard to actually retire, which is different than actually finding more time to spend with my kids and my grandkids. But, listen, justice is not a destination, man. We still have people whose rights are not being honored. Indeed, worse than that. They're being trampled all over by this administration. So what do? Do you stop fighting at some point? I don't think so. I think you fight until your dying breath. And then And, you know, I was on last night with Harry Dunn and Jim Acosta, because we're going to have to plug our January 6th event, at which I hope you're going to attend, at the National Press Club in DC to commemorate the 5-year anniversary of the Capitol attack. And, you know, Harry just spit something out that I'd never heard before. And he was talking about how we all need to go a hell of a lot harder after justice and accountability than we did previously, when Merrick Garland just laid back and decided if he prosecuted Trump and company, it would just make the Department of Justice look too political and erode its legitimacy. Well, how did that work out for us, Merrick? Look at where we are right now with respect to the legitimacy of the Department of Justice. And Harry said, you know, what we need ruthless patriots. And I'm like, dude, I think you just coined that phrase, and I Googled it. It's not a thing, but literally we were on with Olivia Troy, and Olivia, as we were sitting there on air with Jim Acosta, purchased the URLs. I don't know what those are. I can't even spell URL.
Domain name. The domain name. She got
purchased those. She started making T-shirts, like literally while she's on air. And so Ruthless Patriots will be making an appearance at the National Press Club on January 6th, and I can't wait to be one of them.
That's awesome. I love it. Ruthless patriots pursue justice that matters. I mean, I think that's the point is, what does it mean to be a ruthless patriot in the terms that I imagine that Harry and everybody's discussing? It's the idea of what's been missing in, I think, a lot of our lifetimes, for sure, because I would start with the Vietnam War, could talk about the Iraq War, the financial crisis, January 6th, Trump. What's been missing is accountability. And that's what was missing from the Biden administration's Department of Justice. They tried too little too late, I guess. Jack Smith's investigation, we could talk about it and rehash it. But it's about accountability. And you just have to wonder what that could ever look like. And you guys are going to draw that up. I think that you guys are going to be the architects of what accountability looks like, because there's a whole bunch of people in your lane, especially, that are going to be very influential in demanding congressional policymakers, with whom many of you have relationships with, do the right thing. Is that fair interpretation, that you're going to talk to your friend Eric Swalwell or any of the rest that you have a relationship with, that all these other kind of influential content creators, journalists, activists, you're going to say, you got to do this or else you're going to lose us too?
We have to do it. And ruthless patriotism, in our view, means aggressively applying the rule of law without fear or favor, particularly without fear of losing a case in court. Applying the rule of law to the ruling class criminals, the people of power and influence and connections and wealth, often the white males. We have to apply the rule of law ruthlessly, but fairly and honestly and aggressively, because, Pete, this country has not had an appetite to hold the ruling class criminals accountable. And I am an equal opportunity. I wish I had a cute way to phrase this. Like, I call out people left, right, and center. I don't care, because what did we learn recently from some of the revelations in the Epstein files, Pete? We saw email traffic back in 2019 between and among federal prosecutors. And let me tell you, we choose our words very carefully, because we know the implications of calling somebody a criminal co-conspirator of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. And in that email traffic, it said there are 10. We've identified 10 co-conspirators of Jeffrey Epstein. By choosing that language, what those prosecutors were saying is, we have evidence that these 10 people are criminally liable for the crimes of Epstein and Maxwell. That is what a co-conspirator is. If we're co-conspirators and I commit a crime and you don't do a single thing to help me commit it, but you're one of my co-conspirators, guess what? The law says you're equally guilty and you could be punished just as severely as I am punished. So when I saw 10 co-conspirators, Pete, that was in 2018, 2019, under the first Trump administration. None of them were pursued and held accountable. And what happened during the Biden years? None of them were pursued and held accountable. How is it, Pete? Federal prosecutors identified 10 of Maxwell and Epstein's criminal co-conspirators trafficking in sex trafficking young girls. and none of them have been held accountable. What does that tell us? Neither administration, the ruling class doesn't have an appetite to hold the ruling class criminals accountable. And that's got to effing change if we care at all about good government and if we care at all about the rights of victims. And ultimately, I believe, this is going to sound hyperbolic, if we care about keeping our republic. We've got to hold them accountable.
Yeah, we have to hold them accountable for the crimes that they commit. You're calling them ruling class criminals, which I like, but it's white collar crime. And we can talk about the history of that and how it's been prosecuted or not been in this country, or how it works in other countries where there is arguably more justice and accountability. But also we have to have economic justice with those people too. I just had to throw that in. I mean, like the idea that there are billionaires that exist. I keep thinking about other species, Glenn, where a tree would be allowed to grow so much taller than the rest of the trees if they're all the same species, you know, or
one squirrel gets all the nuts and the rest have to freeze and starve during winter. Come on now.
Just one fat fucking dolphin swimming around, and he's the fattest dolphin. All the other dolphins, are like close to starving.
Are the worst. I hate dolphins. No,
you do?
No, I don't hate dolphins. How can you hate a dolphin?
I don't know why you would say such a thing. I was shocked by that. I'm glad you mentioned the Epstein files. I'm glad you mentioned the 10 co-conspirators, because I just watched your video over on YouTube and Substack, where if you're not following Glenn, you should be, obviously, but you probably are. And yeah, it was a great, very important video, and all the points you just made about the 10 co-conspirators. Where do we go from here on them? Aren't we going to find, I mean, what is your prediction? There's no way that now that we know this much that we're not going to learn much more. And furthermore, on the Epstein files, like how many more things, how many more files, is there any way to determine how much more is going to come out? And why on earth politically is the Department of Justice and the Trump administration choosing to drip it out this way? I don't know. Maybe they're hanging on for some miracle that it's not going to come out. I just don't get it. But what else is left?
I think you're right. They're hanging on for that miracle. What they're doing is coming up with as many pretexts as they can to not fully disclose the Epstein files. And this is where I've got to beat up on my former friends in corporate media, legacy media, because when I saw DOJ, Pam Bondi's, the dirty DOJ leadership, I don't call them the dirty DOJ because there are 100,000 men and women who are career public servants who were there before Trump, and they're still there. Now, they've lost several thousand. They've either unlawfully terminated them, or people have self-selected and left because they can't be part of this dirty regime. So I don't call them the dirty DOJ because there are still 100,000 great public servants hunkering down and trying to do the people's work. But boy, do we have dirty DOJ leadership in Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche. They couldn't be dirtier. They couldn't have less loyalty to the rule of law or the Constitution. But when I saw them announce, and this blew my mind, we just found 1 million Epstein documents. And what did corporate media do? Look at the headlines. There were a couple that got it right, but most of them said DOJ just found 1 million documents. No, they didn't. Can you at least in the headline say DOJ claims they just found 1 million documents?
Right.
Where did they find them? They found them in the exact office that prosecuted Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. Took Ghislaine Maxwell to trial, tried to take Jeffrey Epstein to trial until he ended up dead in a jail cell and he couldn't tell tales about any of his co-conspirators. How is it that you just found 1 million Epstein documents? Did you not look in the part of the Department of Justice, the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office, that prosecuted the cases?
Hold on. You don't think that they just found them? They've had them. They just said they. Right? You don't think there's any truth to? I mean, there isn't any reporting. How do you prove that you just found something? But the reason for saying that is, and now we need more time with it. But the truth is, we've always had these files, and we're just trying to take more time, distract you with, I don't know, a war in Venezuela, maybe.
We need more time, Pete. But there is a pending investigation exception. So how soon before we hear Pam Bondi say, oh my goodness, in these 1 million documents that we just found, there's lots of people who now need to be investigated. So we can't possibly disclose the Epstein files because we can't disclose anything if there's a pending investigation, which contradicts what Kash Patel said in his memo in July. He said, I exhaustively exhaustively searched for every Epstein file. Did you read that memo? It was like it was written by a fifth grader. He's like, I looked in storage rooms. I looked in desk drawers. I looked in broom closets. I did not find them in a boat. I did not find them with a goat. I did not look. I mean,
hey, that's
this is what we get. We've got a deranged Dr. Seuss as the FBI director. Read the memo, Pete. Read that July memo.
Hold on. Have you done that bit before? That was very funny. I'm surprised.
First time, Dr. Seuss, deranged Dr. Seuss. So, no, seriously, what he was trying to do in that memo, because what did he tell us? His conclusion was, because I did such a thorough search for Epstein documents, I am announcing that there is nobody left to be investigated or prosecuted. There are no leads that need to be pursued. That was the lie he told at the time. I maintain it was a lie because he was trying to shut it all down. This is before the Epstein Files Transparency Act, right? And now they shift to, oh my goodness, I guess Cash missed 1 million documents that were in the office where the prosecutions were conducted. Come on, Cash.
No. I could talk to you about this very important story forever, but I just got a couple more minutes with you, and I want to ask you about two other legal developments that I think are pretty important here at the end of the year. Both are the Supreme Court. Let's go back to the earlier one first, which is we heard arguments on Trump's tariffs, and the interpretation from every legal expert who I've read, because I'm not an idiot, I don't try to read these arguments or listen to these arguments before the Supreme Court and decide what I heard. I go to the legal experts. That's what we do here. And you being one of them, what is your interpretation of the arguments around the tariffs? It does seem, and you've just done a video, that the courts across the country are turning against him. If you believe that they're just politicians in robes, that they're all Republicans advocating for Republican policy, it would make sense that they are starting to turn against the Trump regime that they helped put there in the first place, because the country is starting to turn against it, because they know conservative orthodoxy on economics, free market capitalism is certainly against these tariffs. And so what did you hear in those arguments? What do you think that means if they in June decide against this? That seems like be a pretty big one. And then we got to talk about their more recent decision in terms of the National Guard.
Yeah, the National Guard case is hugely consequential. The tariffs case is too. And what I heard was a very skeptical group of Supreme Court justices, regardless of whether they typically lean left or typically lean right. And I actually think there is this fear in some Supreme Court justices in ruling against Donald Trump in big cases, because the first time Donald Trump says, guess what? And we've heard this over the years. I think it was Sandra Day O'Connor who first said it. Guess what? The Supreme Court doesn't have an army to enforce its rulings. So I'm going to do what I damn well please on the tariffs front. And if you can't count on the courts to control a runaway criminal executive branch, and we know we can't count on a Republican-controlled Congress to address a runaway criminal executive branch, what have we got? Well, we've got a dictatorship. And I actually think the Supreme Court, in part, is worried about that. We haven't seen the tariffs opinion yet. I do believe some of them, unfortunately, are more like politicians in robes than they are, judges of the law and the Constitution who are just supposed to call balls and strikes. But we'll see. I think they're going to rule against Trump on the tariff case. And then I think Trump will find new ways to abuse presidential power on the economic front. But yeah, what I'm really thrilled about is that we had 3 justices cross over on deploying the military to the streets of America, because that was a big ticket case that Yeah, go ahead.
Here's the headline at The Economist. I go to The Economist, Glenn. The Supreme Court has taken the National Guard away from Donald Trump. His remaining options for sending in the troops are legally fraught. This is on the 23rd, so you might have missed it. The Supreme Court dealt the president a rare and consequential defeat, they say, when Americans had other things on their minds. In Trump v. Illinois, an emergency plea that had been pending since October, 6 justices ruled that the president could not, for now, deploy National Guard troops in Chicago to help federal officials manage protests against his immigration policy. I guess the only other detail I'd add that I heard is it doesn't necessarily apply to DC because the president has some jurisdiction in DC, which is why I think he tried it there first. But in terms of every other state sending in their or another state's National Guard on this issue, explain.
So this is a hugely consequential ruling because I think Donald Trump believed he would receive little or no pushback from the Supreme Court when, he made clear his determination to militarize the streets of America, whether with federalized state National Guard troops or federal military members proper, the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, the Marine Corps. And so I think what his plan was, which feels kind of Project 2025-ish, and we need a Project 2026. We ain't waiting until 2029, but which felt kind of Project 2025-ish is, okay, I'm going to send military folks into the streets of American cities, and I'm going to create so much chaos, so much upheaval, and so I'm going to drive people out into the streets to protest what I'm doing, that I am then going to have to declare martial law, invoke the Insurrection Act, and postpone, in air quotes, because postpone means cancel, postpone the 2026 midterm elections, which would probably be the end of our democracy, short of an actual revolution. And now the Supreme Court, thank goodness, we had 3 justices cross over, Roberts, Amy Coney Barrett, and the beer guy, Brett Kavanaugh, cross over and say, no, neither the law nor the Constitution permits him to federalize state National Guard troops and send them into the streets unless, Pete, there's an insurrection or a rebellion which connotes a foreign country, not protesters against government overreach, which connotes a foreign country coming in and attacking the United States. And they also paid lip service. Now, this is the shadow docket, so it's not a full-blown final opinion yet, but it's an encouraging sign. They also said, and what he can't do with federalized state National Guard troops, he also can't do with federal military members proper. So it's such a big effing deal because it throws a huge hurdle in front of his efforts. And mind you, what the federal court judges said, including Trump-appointed judges, Judge Karen Immergut in the Portland National Guard case said, Donald Trump's assertions in court are, quote, untethered to the facts. And Judge April Perry in the Chicago case said Donald Trump is pouring fuel on a fire he started. And that made its way up to the Supreme Court. And they said, you can't do it. That is huge.
Huge, huge, huge. That is, I don't know if it's one of the biggest, most important, but it's got to be up there in terms of how this impacts the American public, especially people that live in cities that they have targeted this way. It would seem, we'll see if they follow the rule, right? I mean, I don't know. They're using federal troops. They've basically militarized police, ICE, and all these other federal agencies that are in cities all over the country. But that's not the National Guard. And I guess they've also given billions of dollars to fund those. So it's like, yes, they can't use the National Guard, but they've created so many new fat ICE agents. You have to be able to run 1.5 miles and do 15 push-ups to make it in.
A mile and is there a time limit on the 1.5 miles? Can you do it in a week?
There's a time limit. You got to do it in like 3 days, and they can't.
And you got to do 50. Did you make up 15 push-ups?
No, I think it's 15 push-ups. And I don't know, it's 1.5 miles and some very reasonable, like 15 minutes or something. And it's really hurt recruitment, but still they've funded, Congress gave Department of Homeland Security, like it feels like enough money to create their own new army. Thus, I'm not going to say not needing the National Guard, but I don't know.
Yeah, and it does such disrespect to actual federal law enforcement officers and agents who care about the work and who are real protect and serve people. These are the people I serve with in DC. I don't think any of this is sustainable, Pete. You get a bunch of fat high school graduates who want to get that sign-on bonus. It's not going to end well for anybody. No. Law enforcement agencies that are being degraded by that. So, none of this is sustainable in the long run. He's doing a lot of damage. He's instilling a lot of fear, but I still believe, Pete, it's all going to implode. It's going to come crashing down. I don't know if that means we get a President J.D. Vance to step into the last year or two of Trump's term. I don't know. Nobody knows. But given the way Trump is behaving, 160 posts hating everybody on Christmas Day and Christmas night, I don't think any of this is sustainable.
I don't either. And by the way, Army Specialist Sarah Beckstrom was 20 years old when she was shot point blank by two National Guardsmen were shot, but everybody knows the story. But she died. Andrew Wolf was critically injured. But I put that on Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, and anybody that supported putting National Guardsmen in uniform, like sitting ducks on the street, to do nothing, to be humiliated. In my opinion, I said to them, I go, when I was in DC, I said, this is a humiliating assignment that you've agreed to take. And if you're just taking orders, I just want you to know it looks bad. You're not protecting people. And in the end, they put themselves in harm's way. Sitting ducks is the way I see it. But I had to ask you one more thing. I just remembered. They say the January 6th pipe bomb suspect, they caught him. And apparently the guy was an election denier. Mm-hmm. And I feel like no one's talking about that's not getting enough attention. Maybe that's just my algorithm. So I just want to ask you if you paid attention to that. I didn't see, if you'd done a video on it, I missed it.
I haven't. And it's not, I instantly read the arrest warrant, the affidavit, which set out the facts supporting probable cause that this is the guy who did it. And, it's an almost entirely circumstantial case. No identifying eyewitnesses, for example. But, there's some strong circumstantial data points there suggesting this is the guy who did it. He may be, sort of mentally unstable and not well. I did see the election denier part. I also saw reporting that he kind of had, hate for both parties. And but to your point, Pete, I don't know why corporate media refused.
Has he not admitted? The suspect's name is Brian Cole. He's been charged? Has he not admitted to?
When he was arrested and interrogated, I can't remember if he confessed. I don't recall seeing reporting on that, but I may have missed it. But it does seem like corporate media is equal parts irresponsible and fearful. And I'm sorry, I was a journalism major in college undergrad. I revere the study and the practice of journalism, but it seems like they are irresponsible. Maybe that's driven by their bottom line. And it seems like they are fearful that Donald Trump is going to come after them. So we're not hearing about things like, the assassination attempts and what was really behind those. And, even the Charlie Kirk shooting and now the pipe bomber thing. It all just kind of goes into a black hole, a black news hole. And I don't know why that is, unless it's irresponsibility and fear.
You're keeping January 6th in people's memories with this event coming up, right? That's good. And
yeah, we're going to get a press club on the evening of the 6th. Jim Acosta put it together, and it's going to be, Harry Dunn and Mike Fanone and Adam Kinzinger and Miles Taylor, myself, Olivia Troy, and others to be named in later trades, I guess. But it's come together very quickly. And here's the thing I want to say about that, Pete. And I don't want to compare 9/11 to January 6th. They were both horrific. One was an attack on our democracy or on our country from outside, and one was from inside, from a failed president who lost an election. But, we have annual commemorations of what happened on 9/11 as well. We should. But we don't seem to be focusing on the attack on American democracy and on the lives of everybody in the U.S. Capitol on January 6th. And it's a shame because I think Jim Acosta and Harry and some others were putting this event together, and people who could have been sponsors were running in the opposite direction because that's not what they want to be linked with. I want to be linked with commemorating the heroism of all of those law enforcement agents who protected the lives of Republicans and Democrats alike, and who protected American democracy in a very real sense on January 6th. So we have to keep pushing back against the lies, the propaganda, the whitewashing. It's not a day of love. It was a day of an attempted over.
No, I think that's important. I think that's what you and all those guys and I, to an extent, whenever I'm involved with anything, conversation around January 6th, are trying to do is to make sure that history is exactly as we fucking watched it. And I'll compare 9/11 to January 6th. And I was in New York City on 9/11, and I knew people who died 9/11, and I have some trauma around the after effects of it and so on. But I think the difference is a stranger attacking your loved one, or someone that you love attacking your loved one, a stranger molesting your child, or a priest or a coach or a teacher, someone you trust. Because 9/11 and January 6th are not comparable for a lot of reasons, but in, I think, a lot of ways, it's worse that on January 6th, there wasn't more damage to human life, but certainly to the country in a lot of ways. I mean, it's hard to compare, but the fact that the president of the United States told a lie that he knew he was telling, Jack Smith has proved over and over, plenty of evidence that he knew he was lying, that the big lie was a lie, that he didn't buy it, plenty of evidence. He convinced millions of Americans still to this day of that lie. And that's, in a lot of ways, it's worse to be the attack coming from within. And we've always seen treason and espionage on ourselves as a pretty bad crime. This was the president of the United States led a campaign, a big lie. We've seen this in history, and we know what it caused. And I've always had compassion myself for people who believe the big lie, especially for those who acted on it and had their lives changed that day. So,
well, listen, people are entitled to listen to and act based on what the president of the United States says.
Yeah. Yes.
Now, fortunately, we can discern fact from fiction, right? Propaganda from truth. Some people can't. Maybe some people don't want to, even if they can. But when the president says to you point blank, your vote was stolen, your election was rigged, your favorite president is being wrongfully dragged out of the Oval Office. Go attack the Capitol, stop the steal, stop the certification. Red-blooded Americans, blue-blooded Americans say, yes, Mr. President, Pete, I joined the Army because if my leaders told me, Glenn, if you don't go to some other country and fight like hell, you won't have a country anymore. Yeah. I would have saluted smartly and deployed. Fortunately, in my 6.5 years active duty, I was never called upon to deploy, and I'm just as happy. I don't want to go fight in wars if I can avoid it, but I signed up for it, and I was willing to do it. And some people, when they're told that by the president, of course they're going to accept it, whether critically or uncritically, and act on it. So, I hesitate before I say, well, I have, great sympathy or empathy for the people who attacked the Capitol. But listen, I understand why many of them were motivated to do what they did. And that's why you have to hold the ringleader accountable, Donald Trump, because he's the one who sent them there.
And the January 6th investigation led by a bipartisan members of Congress, and Jack Smith's investigation proved it all. It's all there. It's not, you can decide to look away from it, but if you paid attention to it, it was actually pretty engaging and entertaining. You covered it. You're friends with a lot of those people that prosecuted it. So there's no question about what happened anymore. There's that day and what led to it. Glenn Kirschner, will you do a New Year's? Will you stay up? Will you and your lovely bride stay up even?
I'll stay up till 10 o'clock, but then I conk out. But I do nightly community meetings on Substack, which I love. I mean, I think I need them as much as the other community members need. So I'm sure I'll be on New Year's Eve.
All right. Go follow him on Substack if you haven't. On YouTube, obviously, you probably already are. Glenn, thank you as always for joining me, and everybody for watching live. Thank you very much.
Great seeing you, Pete.